So, hello. Um, it took me a long time to finish this set of maps that I tried to start this series specifically for agriculture in the EU. Just as a very quick recap, this is basically an updated version of an older project. I will show a couple of things from the older project, with the idea to produce layers that can be used for biodiversity conservation, but not focusing on the biodiversity or the ecosystem itself, but in the socio-economical aspect of the conservation process, right? So here, what I just produced is a set of agricultural-based layers where we can see production intensity. That can give us a good view of where could we implement certain approaches, either something as drastic as isolation, complete isolation, like a park, natural park, a protected area, or something more interactive, like sustainable approaches, or bringing the population into the conservation activities on a day-by-day basis, right? So that's a big kind of work, right? So here, I will just start showing. Hopefully I can this map. So I am going to be uploading the whole process written. Oh, if only. I was just here a moment ago. So yeah, so I will be, gosh, talk about a bad timing. So I'll be trying to write a more informal way of how all of this is done. So this is basically the poster. I don't know if I can open the image in the new tab. Yeah. Did it do it? No. Can I zoom in? I think so. No. Give me just 1 second and I'll bring the original. I need to pause. All right, problem solved. So what I was saying is that this is like the original work consisted in multiple, right? Technically all of this specifically. So we built 3 blocks, one dedicated to something more in the positive side. We categorize that as incentives. Other ones as more an opportunistic one. Or not opportunistic, sorry, it's opportunity. So it can help, right? But it does not intrinsically help, right? It can be also something that doesn't benefit the situation. And obviously the ones who are like more experimental, facilitators and conflicts themselves, right? Here I am working specifically with the opportunity cost, and right now I will be showing the one from agriculture. So this is where this is coming from. And initially we had like a very simple framework, right? The whole thing was have some statistical information, in this case money, which is the amount produced, having that money and having the areas where we could find where those products are happening, right? Then we just merge the thing and do a very quick calculation of proportion between money and area, and having our maps. I will be showing the 3 attempts that just happened because again, this took me quite some time, and I want to show this because this is part of the whole process of errors and more errors and experimenting and trying to produce something that can be trustworthy or close to it, right? So initially, how did I see this whole process, this whole project, right? So I needed to have, as I mentioned, the statistical information. That it was agricultural production, and it's represented in millions of euros. The second input that I needed is a 10 by 10 grid of Europe. Why this grid? Well, this is because for the research institute that I used to work, the way that they globally do this conservation, geospatial conservation planning, tends to be with something like a photograph, right? We call them raster files, and those raster files are based on pixels. This pixel is the size of 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. Obviously, depending on the scale that we are trying to work, this can be done on a higher resolution and such. And the other input that I needed here is the land use or land cover. Right? Now, the initial idea was to merge those area-based information, calculate the overall area, because maybe it will make sense when I show the software, and then have a table, or the attributes table, where I can have the identifier of the NUT2. The NUT is a political division based on whatever economic parameter, right? This happens only in Europe, right? And I say Europe, not European Union. Then immediately you can see that where is the NUT2 vector file, right? So I forgot over here to have it. Initially I was forgetting to have it. Like, how am I going to get the identifier for that? Yeah. In the statistical side, what I was more interested in is on the products, the type of products, and how to associate them to the land use. Then the whole idea was going to be just join those tables and then calculate the production divided by the area, and that should be simple. But on that try, it did not work because I was missing a lot of information. Then this one came in. I started getting a lot, I started getting more complex. You might say even unnecessarily complex. Yeah. So over here, initially you can see that where I'm bringing the land use, right? So I took that information from this site, which is very trustworthy, Copernicus. I took the 2018, not the 2020, right? And then I split that vector file into the code 18, which is the code that identifies the types of land use that I am interested in. On the other side, I have the grid and the NUT2s merge initially, and this process is almost the same. Doing the onion of those two, calculating the areas, having the table ready to merge with the NUT2 identifier. From the statistical part, stayed basically the same. There's this whole process that I will get into because I needed to filter the years, I needed to filter the actual NUT2s, because this table comes with country identifiers, NUT1, NUT2, and NUT3. So I need to start filtering all of that. And once again, join by attributes, remove the areas from land use and NUT2s that gave me a null. So here I will go ahead and immediately say that this process has been very exhausting because the data set was huge, yeah, huge, and especially for the type of device that I am working with. Right? So this is one of the many things that can complicate a project like this. Yeah. So the whole idea was of these remove areas where I had null is to eliminate unnecessary information. Right? That was a process that was practiced later on even more and more and more. Because we were talking, I know this is not the best way for you guys to imagine the whole thing, but think about 1 million records. That's what I was, a little bit more than, I think it was 1,200,000 elements. So I needed to eliminate more and more because that was going to create unnecessary processing, and even processing in terms of calculation and processing in terms of visualization for the computer. Then I needed to summarize. I will explain what is summarize in a later video. Right? Summarize, so we condense the amount of money, right? Because we might have 4 records for one NUT. So instead of having the 4 records, I need to have the sum of those 4 for the whole NUT. Then we go to the calculation. So it's the aggregated money value based on the proportion of land use area intersecting the NUT2. Yeah. This is very important. And finally, just for the sake of having everything clean, is to merge the result with the grid. So we actually go from having the polygons, the actual polygons of the land use, to have the things on the grid, which the last step is convert to a raster. So now I'm happy to report that this is the final scheme for all the process. And I don't know if you can immediately see, it's way cleaner and way simpler. Technically the same steps, or some of them, but yeah. So in my last step 10, the first step that I did is to use the function union for the 3 vector information. Yeah. But before that, I needed to ensure to have the total area of land use, the total area of NGT2, and the total area of the grid. I need to have that because in the moment I start using the function union, I am just again, I will end up showing this. Instead of having a circle, for example, like this, if I union with something that intersects over here, now I need to have the total area of the circle, but at the same time, I need to have the amount of area here and the amount of area over here. This is why, after doing all this union, I need to calculate the geometry, from which I need to have, and I need to focus on the land use fragmented and the land use exclusively inside or intersecting in the NUT2. With that, I immediately should have, or I did have, the table, the attribute table that I wanted. From the statistical part, from the money side, so basically what I needed to have is, this is the proper name of that table, the economic accounts. And then I filter the year, 2019 and 2020. Right now, you will, in this hopefully 3 videos at max, you will see only results for 2019. But the whole idea of doing this is that now I know how to do it even easier, because all this process can be possible in 8 hours. And yeah, it took me around a couple of weeks to manage to master all of this. So yeah, so I filter by year, I filter by million euros, I filter by NUT2s, and I filter by the specific product of my interest. Then I use a very simple code with our tidyverse formatting. So basically I just spread the information. Everything is going to make sense because I will be showing those tables. So I spread the information according to the actual products, and then I sum those columns of those products. I aggregate them based on a table of association for a land use. Once I have that, I just need to do a pivot table. Yes, I did this in Excel. I could have done this also in Tidyverse, where I just wanted to aggregate the money information by each one of the entities. Once I have that, now I have the type of table that I need, where I have 8 classes of land use and the NUT ID. Those two, I end up merging, joining them as attributes, and then is when I do the calculation that I have explained before. Now that I have the calculation, because if you remember in one of the other methodologies, I separate the land uses from the beginning. I only separate the land uses here. Yeah. So I've been having like a huge database, data set until here. Here's where I start splitting vector files and tables. Separate that, and I use a function called summarize statistic, where once again I aggregate my money, but now instead of NUTs or land use, I aggregate on grid ID, because in the end I want to know how much money was produced inside that grid cell, and that is going to be my intensity definition, right? Well, not the definer. Okay. And once again, for the sake of cleanness, join the grid. This is the overall scheme that I follow. I'm gonna leave this video here, and I will continue in the next one showing how those build materials look in some of these steps. Okay, so until the next one, bye bye.